Hello, hello, everybody. Think I am live now. Bit of a slow start today, but we are powering through this course nonetheless. Let's start by doing our weekly watch the professor fumble around while he has an error message on his screen about not being connected to YouTube. That's fun. Maybe you won't even see this awkward little moment here, or maybe you will. Okay, it looks like it's reloaded. Everything's good. Let's go ahead and check out our video. I'll post this link for you, and then we can move on to a much more uh, entertaining screen here. Okay, there we go. Here is the link. We definitely want to make sure everybody gets it immediately. There are two videos this week that you need to watch. There's this one, which is the first link here. Um, that is for this video to watch this live session. And there is also a video I recorded in the spring that talks about outlining. And outlining is going to be important for your upcoming informative speech that you'll be doing not this week, but next week. Okay? You don't quite have to worry about all of it yet. Um, don't forget also that tonight, which is Wednesday night, your introduction speech or your introductory speech is due tonight at midnight. I'm not going to be awake checking it exactly at midnight, so as long as I get it when I wake up in the morning, so if your upload takes until 1 or 2 a.m., um, I'm sorry that it took that long and that you're up that late, but I won't know the difference, and, that's what we can do. Um, so excellent. That should be good there. I'm still looking at my screen here. Doesn't seem to check out. The video seems to be playing, but I can't see chat. Now that's an interesting problem that I have there this evening. So that's gonna be difficult. But you know what? I'm kind of used to rambling on my own, so that's probably we'll just deal with it. If you have any questions, do type them into chat, and we will. Um, I'll figure out how to address your questions. Okay. Um, so here we are. The content for Chapter 1, your first week of reading, was about the human communication process and various models of communication. Now, um, the book had several in there, and the one we're going to focus on is the SMCR model. Before I get ahead of ourselves, though, let's take a quick moment to consider what communication is. Um, so here are some examples of behaviors um, that count as communication. A girl bats her eyes at a frat boy from across the room. A lot of people might recognize this as flirtatious behavior. And flirting is a form of communication. Specifically, it's non-verbal communication. Now, another situation that many people will recognize is, for example, maybe Barack Obama giving an address about universal health care. I do need to update this PowerPoint with our current president. Perhaps it can say, Donald Trump gives an address about the importance of a border wall. But anyway, the point is that this is a public speech, an oration. Most people would recognize that as being a communication type activity. Some things that actually kind of create some confusion, though. It might be this third option here. A student slouches in his chair during class. A lot of people would say, well, that's just, someone's tired, or maybe they're disinterested, or something like that. But one thing that about communication that we need to understand is that everything we do is coded in a cultural um, hue of symbolism. So even though the student might genuinely be tired and just kind of, through no fault of his or her own, um, is tired during class, unfortunately, in our society, slouching or looking at the floor during class is often um, interpreted. And when you interpret something, it's still a communication activity. And so this slouching in the chair is interpreted as being a message, particularly a message that the student is disinterested, not necessarily tired. And so you have situations where, like, and I'm sure this might have happened to you or your friends in high school, where the teacher might, aggressively seek your attention in order to, maybe they'll make a loud noise or something to try to get the student to, perk up, sit up in their chair, might even tell them to sit up straight in your chair, fix your posture, those kinds of things, because they think that maybe the student's, showing disrespect, or maybe the student is, off in la la land when they need to be in the present moment learning algebra. So that is something that is also communication. The student is sending communication, whether they're aware of it or not. And that's why it's important to be aware of how your body is positioned um, while you're out in public. The next one that's might be kind of confusing for people, but is still nonetheless a communication experience, is a child watching a program about prehistoric giant whales. Now, people will say, well, that's like telecommunications. A child is watching this program and receiving messages. Um, but how is the child engaging in a communication activity if they're the person watching? Similarly to the student in this third example here, it doesn't really actually matter if there's another person there to receive your feedback. When you receive a communication, you also generate feedback. It's an instinctual reaction that humans have to communication messages. One of the reasons why people with what we'll call a deadpan are both distrusted, but also kind of sought after, depending on what profession I guess you're talking about, is because a person with a deadpan gives very little feedback. Um, and for some people that's a problem, but for others it's great because they could receive any kind of message and then not give any communication back, and that's a gift in some situations. But anyway, the point is I'm trying to make here is that even though this might not seem like a reciprocal communication experience here, it is, because the child is giving some kind of feedback to the TV. It doesn't matter that the producers of the program don't get to see it. The child is still communicating to the giant whale program. Um, so let's go ahead and actually define this. This is the definition in your textbook. Communication is a continuous, ever-changing process of interaction. And again, it's a continuous process, and you might have seen that other model of communication in Chapter 1, which is called Dance's helical model, in which it was just kind of like a tornado-shaped squiggly on your page there. And what that was supposed to communicate is, what it was supposed to communicate to you was communication, once it starts, it doesn't really stop. It's continuous. That television program goes to the child's eyes. They start giving feedback to the TV. That still doesn't stop the process of communication. Now, of course, the TV is not going to respond. It's an inanimate object. But the idea is that for every piece of communication you get, you create and generate feedback, which you then shoot back at whatever is sending it to you. We'll talk about some of the terms in this process here in a second. That's communication, and the important thing to remember about it is that it is continuous. So even though I can't respond live to your speech, for example, maybe contextualizing this more in our situation instead of watching a documentary about Shark Week or whatever, even though I'm not there to give you live grading, I will be reacting to your speech, and I will give you feedback, not just in the written stuff on the paper that I write, but I'll give you the same kind of feedback that I would probably give a live student. I would change facial expressions. Maybe I'll change the way I'm sitting in my chair while I'm watching your speech. We don't really have a choice as human beings how we do feedback. Or whether we do feedback, rather. We kind of do have a choice about how we do feedback if we're conscious of our behavior. Nonetheless, The model that we really want to push, though, is actually more simple than any of the principles I kind of try to talk over there. It's called the SMCR model, and SMCR stands for Source, Message, Channel, and Receiver. The source is the composer of a message. Um, Pretty straight up there. Um, that it's fairly self-explanatory there. The message, though, is sometimes confusing for folks. A message is a discrete chunk of communication, like an article, a song. It is not necessarily the main idea. Now, your message could be the quote unquote the main idea you want to get across to another person. But in our speeches, for example, the message isn't just your thesis statement. Your message is the entire speech. And I hope that makes sense. The message is the entire part of communication. Colloquially, we'll say things to each other like, do you get the message? As in, do you understand the main idea? My mom used to say that to me all the time when I was misbehaving. She would, explain to me what I was doing was wrong and what would happen to me if I kept doing it. And then she'd wrap that up by saying, do you get the message? Meaning I should repeat back to her that I will never play with the screen door again, or something like that. But really, the message is the entire piece of communication that we're viewing. So for this class, your message is your whole speech. So in the future, when I say things like crafting your message, I don't mean just crafting your thesis. I mean crafting your entire speech from beginning to end, from the first word to the last word. Next, we have the channel, and this might be somewhat confusing, but I think it's maybe not as confusing as the message. Channel is the human sense through which a message is accepted. So, for example, a newspaper's channel is through sight. A song's channel is through hearing, or sense of your auditory response. If your mother is baking you a apple pie, the channel you're receiving that message of, familial affection is through your nose, as the odor goes through the house, right? We make associations and meanings out of those kinds of things. And yes, you can also do touch as a message. People read Braille all the time. So any channel, any of the human senses, smell, taste, touch, not just sight and sound, are valid channels through which to send a message that can be interpreted by a receiver who is the audience of a message. Now, an important thing to remember about this is that a receiver is anyone who happens to be in the message's path. All right. So even though I'm talking to you over the internet, maybe you're watching this video in front of a roommate with your speakers on, and they hear every word that I'm saying. So even though they may not be my quote unquote audience, in the terms of the colloquial sense of the term audience, because they're not in my class, they are still a receiver for this message because they have no choice but to listen to my words, and their brain will start making sense of those words. So the receiver of the audience is the audience of a message, and that audience can include everybody, not just what we mean colloquially when we say audience, which is like the specific person you're thinking about. All right. Next, we have some verbs that these SMCR folks go through. The two primary ones are encoding and decoding. To encode a message is the thing that sources do. What encoding means is that you take meaning from your brain, ideas from your own brain. Sorry if you heard my microphone tap there. I always tap my head when I say from your brain. It's a reflex that I do. But inside your brain, you have ideas that you want to get out to another person's brain. And so to do that, you encode those ideas. You attribute meaning to symbols or maybe actions to try to convey your message, your ideas. And so, words, these noises I'm making with my mouth, they really are just random noises. However, we have attributed meaning to them, and they've become symbolic of ideas. And that's one of the channels through which I try to take thoughts from my brain, stick them into yours. Um, and that's, in the end, that's what communication is about. However, communication won't work without the other end, decoding the message. And that's the process of looking at symbols or actions to interpret meaning from a message. And of course, when I say looking, I mean that in a, yes, metaphorical sense, because you can take anything. You can read something that's literally looking, but you can hear something, touch something, taste something, smell something, and as long as you feel like there's meaning attributed to that, that they're symbolic of ideas, and you're interpreting that those symbols. And again, so it doesn't necessarily have to be verbal, or visual or auditory. There's a lot of um, meaning going on in, for example, in that previous example of baking a pie. If you come home after going to college for a long time and your, uh, mom bakes you an apple pie, your favorite thing to eat, there is a message in that. The pie is symbolic, not just of the pie is symbolic and has meaning. It's a message is being communicated to you, and it is hoped that you will decode that message and perhaps encode your own message of appreciation, for your mother to receive back as feedback. In any case, there are some problems sometimes with communication, and these problems we attribute to something we call noise, which has two varieties: internal noise and external noise. And noise is any kind of interference with a message. So, internal noise is interference that comes from within your own body or mind. So if you are maybe going through a difficult breakup right now, and though you're playing this video or watching this video, if you're not, you're not focused on it because you're focusing more on the argument that you had with your significant other, that would be internal noise. That's an internal distraction or interference originating from your own mind because of this negative experience that you've just had. Now, external noise is probably more familiar to you. It's things that happen from outside your body, to disrupt you. So that would be like literal noise. Maybe the fan is too loud. Maybe you have an air conditioner that's blowing in your room right now and you just can't really hear my voice, and you cranked up the video as high as it'll go, and it's just not working out for you. Sorry. But that would be an example of external noise, okay? Now, external noise can also take the form not just of literal noise, but maybe you have a friend that's being really annoying right now by tapping you on the shoulder, trying to get your attention while you're trying to watch this video. It's an online class. They think you're just messing around on YouTube, so they're, hitting you with spitballs and touching you and tugging at your clothes, trying to get you to, I don't know, play World of Warcraft or whatever. That would also be external noise. Okay. Now, of course, the desire to play World of Warcraft and shut this video off, and that would be internal noise because you are thinking about your next activity, rather than thinking about what's being said to you. So that would be internal noise. One last thing before I move on to feedback here, is that it doesn't necessarily matter in terms of thinking about your speeches whether something is internal noise or external noise, but you do have to be aware of both what's going on inside your audience member in terms of their emotions and their physiological needs. So, for example, if this were an actual physical class, a great example would be, if you're going to give your speech at 11:30 a.m. and you know for a fact that college students don't really eat breakfast, there's going to be a lot of internal noise during your speech about cookies because everybody's craving to eat something. So you could maybe take advantage of that and provide the class some cookies so that they might pay more attention. Or others sometimes maybe choose, if it's possible, maybe in the more adult world when you have time to choose your times. Theory, really get to choose your own time to talk. I'm sorry, but but if you can, maybe you'll think about internal noise and be like, well, I know that a lot of people are going to be wanting to eat lunch. They'll be distracted internally. I don't want to get a time slot that's around lunch. Maybe like a respectful hour after lunch, like maybe 2 o'clock. I'll speak. That way, everybody's eaten, everybody's digested their food, and they're ready to go back to paying attention. Um, that's something that you need to consider. That's really all I'm trying to say. You don't need to split fine hairs about what's internal or external. Just know that you need to be aware of people's physiological and emotional um, status at the time of your speech. Next is feedback, which is a verbal or nonverbal reaction to a message. And the thing I've been impressing through you throughout this video is that feedback is fairly involuntary, and it is part of what makes it is like the functional part that makes communication continuous. Even though you are not visible to me right now, you're giving me feedback. Maybe you are slouched in your chair and disinterested. Maybe you are taking notes on a different screen. Maybe you are listening to me while you're playing World of Warcraft. All of these things can be encoded with meaning and then therefore decoded for me to interpret. Can't really change that. Now, I won't be aware of it, but you are giving me feedback, and that's how the communication process is about interaction, even though I'm not there to receive it. Okay, so we're not going to do this quiz here. I kind of wrote that for my in-class session, but there is something I want to look at here, and this is, of course, this would be where I know I have some viewers right now. Welcome, everybody. If you've been typing in chat, unfortunately, I can't see it. It says live chat is disconnected. Please try again later. That was actually 20 minutes ago. Let's refresh the page and try again later. Is it going to let me into live chat? Brian Snow says hello. Sorry, I just blurted your name out for the whole internet to know, but hi there. Okay, yes. Hello, everybody. Actually, refreshing worked. I guess I really did. Just need to try it again later. Anyway, this is an example of communication. It's a poster, and generally I'll ask the live audience to identify the parts of the SMCR model here. So let's start from the top, our live audience here. What is the source for this message? In other words, who did the encoding to author this message? And this is not really a trick question. I'm asking you to. Some people will say, "Well, you are because you put this poster on the slide." Let's just consider the poster. Actually, we don't need to go down mind trick roads here. We can just who wrote this poster for you, or who wrote this poster for us to see, for you to see and for me to post. Would be the source of this message. And also, please be patient. There is a delay. The Canadian Travel Committee. Yeah, probably. No, it looks like it's the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada is what I read here, but you're not that far off. Saw that it was Canada and went for it. That's great. So I'll give you credit for that. So yeah, the source would be again the author of this poster, which is credited to the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. All right. So what is the message? Now this is kind of a trick question, remember, because I ranted about what a message was for quite a while. So let me give you a hint. Remember, a message is not just the main idea. Therefore, the message must also be, or maybe not the word also. If it's not the main idea, then the message must be. And again, for those of you watching the archive, there's a good 20-second delay, so I've gotta wait for a little while. I always think I should have maybe like smooth jazz playing in the background so that when I go silent, people don't think their video froze or something. I need to do something to get some higher production value, you know? Maybe during the actual summer break when summer session 2 is out, I'll mess around with various soundtracks, get some animation going, just have animation everywhere, just like a web page from the 1990s, just have all kinds of flashes and booms and characters dancing around in the margins. Great. My live audience doesn't seem very chatty. Maybe I disconnected. Didn't tell me. So I'll go ahead and kind of cover what you were asking about. So I'm not okay. So it looks like some people came later, and that's okay. You can also, well, you'll hear about it now, but that is a good point. That these videos, when they're concluded, you can watch them again from the beginning. So you didn't really miss anything, and well, but you can always ask. Anyway, the message is the entire poster. And it's important to remember, for at least when I talk about the message, what is your message when I talk about your speeches, I don't mean the main idea, which in this case would probably be Canada, a cool place to do research, and then that exact same phrase in French. The message is the entire poster. It's the entire chunk of communication. That's what the message is. That's why I was kind of saying it was a trick question. A lot of people would say, well, it's Canada, cool place to do research. What do you mean what the message is? We talk about the communication models and how I want you to think about your speeches. When I say what is your message, I'm really asking you, in totality, what are you planning to do in your speech? I'm not just asking you, what's the main idea? Well, I want to talk about cars. No, I'm actually asking you, not just that you want to talk about cars, but what else is going to be part of that message? Are you going to have visual aids? Are you going to have a secondary video you're going to play? Are you going to have research? That's really what's all that jazz is crammed into that question about your message. So I hope that makes at least some sense. So anyway, that's the message, is the entire poster. So it's the polar bears, the arrangement of the text even, it's the credits at the bottom, it's the encouragement itself to go to Canada and do research. Okay. The next part of the SMCR model is channel. So what channel, or human sense, again, a channel isn't like a channel on a television, it's the human senses. So, that would be the 5, or I guess if you're into paranormal occurrences, the 6 human senses. So what sense is this message, which again is the whole poster, meant to be received through? Again, I'm patient. There's a delay. It's a good handful of people. The number actually keeps going up from what I can see. Ah, yes, the answer is sight, vision, eyes. Yes, all of those are correct. That's the correct one. It is, after all, a poster. Now, of course, and I don't know how I would show this on an online format, but if I showed you some Braille, then the channel would not be sight, right? The channel would be touch. And of course, if I were playing like a radio broadcast and I was talking over it, then the channel would be auditory, or your ears, or hearing, or whatever. So yes, but vision, sight, eyes, all correct. Okay, and the last part of the SMCR model is receiver. So who is the receiver of this message? This might sound like a trick question, but it really isn't. So who is receiving this message? It would also be a really good background song, would be that melody that those usually it's like some kind of book reading program. Yes, the viewer. And the viewer could be, again, anybody who watches this video. So if your roommate decides, and they're not enrolled in this class, but if your roommate decides to pull up a chair and look at it, they are also a receiver for this message, even though they're not the audience that I intend to reach. And oftentimes when we ask about who's receiving your message, or who the audience is for your message, you have a very specific answer to that, which would probably be, the audience of this speech is just going to be the people I share the video link with. But reality is that the audience is actually fairly wider than that. It's not just who you share the video link with, but whoever also happens to be looking at a screen that's playing the video. So, that's one reason why people caution you that if you put something on the internet, it's not only there forever, but it's there for everyone. Now, of course, there are ways that you can make it more private, or try to, but the reality is that the receiver of the message is whoever happens to be looking at it. Now, one last thing, the reason why I like to go over this example is because I took this picture and I cut and pasted it directly from, I don't even know what I searched for anymore, but it was a Google image search, and I cut and pasted it into a slide. And this is often sometimes what I see students do when they're creating their visual aids. On one hand, I can understand why you would like a poster like this. Let's say I was talking about Canada and I happen to have this like slide motif that's white and blue, and I found a poster about Canada that also has white and blue in it. I want to slap it on there, and I'll even have a main bullet point about it. And that's all well and good, but the problem is with just cut and paste onto a PowerPoint slide especially, is that it's very difficult to read. Now the text up here, not difficult to read, but when I asked the source, and I give you major kudos out there in the audience for answering, but you can't really read the source. Now maybe you can because I'm broadcasting in high definition, or trying to, and I can kind of read it on my screen. So maybe if you have a similarly sized screen, you can read it too. But on a projector, this bottom part here is totally fuzzed out. You can probably not even read the link here, which is in bold and in larger font. Probably the reason why the person said Canada's travel committee was because they just saw this at the bottom, or maybe the flag over here, which are probably the only distinctive symbols that you can see. Yeah, and the person says, I can't read it. Yep, and so I wanted to show you that to you, because if you have, if you just do cut and paste, you can't assume that even though I can read it on my screen, it's only valid for me and my screen. It's not valid for someone else and their screen. So you have to be, if you're going to cut and paste something, I don't care as long as you give credit. In this case, the credit's right on the poster, but you need to, click on it and expand it. Even though it might look kind of silly on your screen, bigger is better, especially if it means bigger means more clarity. Now, of course, you can make it so big that it actually starts to pixelate and it gets fuzzier. But, somewhere is a magical middle that allows this text to be read. And you can't just cut and paste and leave it there. You'll have to do some extra work with it, even if it looks okay on your screen. Okay, that's the little rant I had about that. But so we can go ahead and move on now. So that wraps up our more traditional lecture side of things today. What I would like to remind you of, or to do for you, is I would like to look at our assignment for the week. That is to brainstorm your informative speech topic, and to also post that idea and collect feedback from your peers. This is going to be basically your first actual written assignment of the semester. It should be fairly quick, but it does involve multiple parts, and you may not have done something like this before. So we'll spend some time on it. Probably more time this week than the next time we do a speech, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and look at it. So for this part of your weekly assignment, I would like for you to do two things. The first thing is I would like for you to create, I guess I actually said 4 things, which are more than 4 things even. But nonetheless, here, let's look at it. So first, I want you to create a new thread in this forum here, and tell us what your informative speech topic is. And I would like for you to do this by Sunday. That's this coming Sunday, July 2nd, at the end of the day. As part of your thread, I would like for you to diagram your speech by telling us the source, message, channel, and receiver. So, and as you do this, be sure to think about potential sources of noise that receivers could experience during your speech. So that's kind of a two-part question, I suppose. What are those sources of noise, and what will I do during the recording of my speech to prevent the noise from being too distracting? Okay. The next part is that by Wednesday, so 7 days from now, you need to reply to 2 other students' topics by telling your classmate whether or not you would be interested in such a speech. And do please be kind. You can say things politely, like learning how to tie shoelaces is an important skill, but I feel that many in this audience would have mastered it already. Maybe a speech about the little thingies, which I've since learned are called aglets, on the ends of the shoelaces should be more appropriate, since people don't really know what that is usually. So that would be a good way to receive, not, I won't say negative feedback, but that'd be a good way to explain to your audience, your audience member, your classmate, that maybe you disagree with their choice of speech topic. Now, of course, you can disagree in a content-related fashion, like, hey, I noticed that your speech was about tying shoelaces and that you endorsed the bunny ear model. I feel that the double knot model is the better one, so I'm looking forward to your speech about what you think is interesting about the bunny ear model. That's another way to talk about maybe disagreement there. But that's not the kind of disagreement I'm talking about here. This is the kind of disagreement that's about, I don't even, the message here, right? When I say I'm using the colloquial term, like I said, I shouldn't do. But the idea, or the main idea here, is that I don't think you should do that particular topic. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to rant about here is that if you don't feel like your classmate's speech would be appropriate, explain why, and maybe be nice and give them a little suggestion about what might be appropriate. And if you can make it about something similar that hopefully they'll be interested in too, that would be great. Try not to say shoelaces suck. Do dinosaurs, dude. Please be a little bit more deft than that. A little more graceful. Save a little more face. That's all the expressions that I can think of. But be kind is the ultimate term there. And finally, help them brainstorm some places they can find cited material from. I've had a lot of students in this class. In fact, I had one last semester, and his attitude was that he was the source on everything. Not necessarily like literally everything, but on the things he chose to talk about. He was a big football fan, and he wanted to do a speech about the New England Patriots, and his attitude was, I watch all of their games, I listen to all their press conferences, I consume all of their media. I can just do this myself, all right? I don't need any cited material. I got it undercut. I have it handled. And there's a difference between, you know, knowing something, or rather, um, being a consumer about something, like consuming all of the media about your topic, and citing a source. When a source citation does, when we talk about it, and we'll talk about it more next week, because I'll actually talk about what the speech is and show you an example. But what cited sources do for you is they show that your ideas and your conclusions and that your information comes from somewhere other than your own personal experience. And this is important for something we call corroboration or veracity. It is good for your credibility as a speaker, even though, quote unquote, everybody knows that the New England Patriots were accused of deflating their footballs last season. All right, I will say that, yep, that's right up there with like 2 + 2 = 4. A lot of people know that. However, that incident is controversial enough that not everybody accepts it as the narrative that should be told about the New England Patriots. You have to show that somebody else other than you has arrived at a similar conclusion. and that's what cited material does for you. So please do help your classmates brainstorm ways they can find cited material for their speech, which means that it's things that they can find about this topic that interests them, even though they may be very passionate about it and they know a lot about it, and on every conceivable measure of expertise, they might be experts on it. They still need, I would say, as someone who went through the PhD process, I would say a real expert always points to consensus about certain things, right? You might be one voice that has a different idea, but there are other things that experts point to that says, and we are all in agreement. Everybody who looks at the New England Patriots says this one thing. Therefore, when I say it, it must be more true. So that's the kind of things that experts do. So if you're a real expert on a topic, I would say you should be looking at things where you can say there is a consensus that the New England Patriots deflated their footballs. All right, and my consensus comes from these 5 other people that wrote articles about it that weren't just that agree with me and my interpretation of that game. Okay, so anyway, that's my little rant about that. I think I'm just about out of rant time tonight. I want to keep these videos to about 40 minutes. So here's your written assignment for the week. I have not assigned any reading for this week. Mostly because I want you to, I know for some people, making a speech topic selection is really easy, and you'll probably be done with this first part anyway in like 5 minutes. For others, a speech topic selection could take a day or more. There's really no way to plan that. So I just give you as much time as I can, and that's about 5 days from now. Tell you what, I will do, well, see, and then I mess up. I will help you model how to do this assignment here. So what I like to do when I had an online class and I had assignments like this, I would highlight the instructions here. I would go into here, into the forum. I would say create thread. And I would make my subject be, Dallas's. That's my first name. I know it's weird. Us people and our designer names, born in the 80s, I gotta tell you how the times were. Dallas's informative speech topic. We don't need a fancier subject than that. I would cut and paste the directions. And then I would look at the directions, create a new thread, and tell us what your informative speech topic is. Okay, so for part 1, I'll just delete this instruction and instead just write it out. I would like to give a speech about the life times of Stan Lee. You do Marvel or DC? Oh man, that's probably a question that will get me beaten up after class. I'm just gonna take a stab at it. I got a 50-50 chance. I'm pretty sure it's Marvel. I'm just kind of pulling your chain there a little bit. So then the next instruction says, as part of your thread, diagram the speech by telling us the source, message, channel, and receivers. Okay, so this is kind of complicated. So let's start with the source. So I'll delete everything up to there. Say, I will be the source, the author of speech I'm giving. Okay, that should hopefully be everybody's answer, by the way. Then the message. Now remember, the message is the speech in totality. So not only will I say the main idea, which might be something like Stan Lee is a great artist and commentator through through his work. I will say is my main idea. I will also show examples of his most famous comics and explain why they are so good. But according to critics. Okay. It's a little bit more specific than I'm just going to talk about Stan Lee. It's more specific than your main idea, but of course at the brainstorming, Yeah, it's the brainstorming. I was going to say brain forming stage. It doesn't have to be much longer than this, but anything that you plan to be part of your message will be there. So in this little communication here, I have the main idea. I also have this idea that I'll probably show some kind of visual aid. That's adequate for right now. Yes, Marvel. Awesome. I got it right. Chat says Marvel. Okay, the channels. It will be audio for the spoken part and visual for the examples I will show on my screen, my audience. Okay, and of course the receivers for your speech, again, because we're good at knowing these tricksy questions I ask. The receivers will be anyone who has access to the video. And then this doesn't make any sense. Right? So I have all the parts there. You'll notice that I didn't write out every single part. I didn't even label it, and that's okay. I understand what's going on because of the way that this all is phrased. But it at least helps you know that you got through all the parts of the question here. The source, message, channel, receiver, all of that there. Okay. So the next part you would say is, as you do this, be sure to think about potential issues of noise during our speech. What are they? I'll see this one. I'll even keep the prompt intact, maybe. You don't have to do it exactly the way I'm doing this right now, by the way, but I'm just trying to show you a way to keep your post organized or to keep your brain organized, because this is a multi-part assignment and it's all communicated through video and text. There's no one live explaining it to you. So anyway, so you keep ourselves organized and we say potential sources of noise. I have a loud air conditioner in my room. This might impact the video quality. All right, in terms of audio. What will I do while recording my speech to prevent the noise from being too distracting? To limit the bad audio, I will turn off my air conditioner during recording. That will address the issue. And again, the idea I have here for talking about potential sources of noise is just to get you conditioned to think about things that might distract your audience. So even though this example, and probably the examples are things that you might think about for your video, or your speech rather, might be pretty simple, like turning things off or turning things on, or waiting until your roommate's out of the house, or whatever you have. The idea is to get in the habit of thinking about how ways my audience might be distracted. And yeah, there you go. So that would be how I would complete this first part of the assignment. I'm even going to post it. I'm just that kind of fun. All right. So that's how you would complete the first half of it. Obviously, you know, I'm not going to do the second half because that would involve you know, giving feedback to myself, and that's kind of weird. But if I were to give feedback to myself, I would say that a topic about Stan Lee as a topic for an informative speech would probably be very appropriate. People would probably be interested in it because, you know, Marvel movies and comic book movies are on the rise nowadays. People are interested in the source material for those, i.e. the original comics or the comics that are running right now. So I would say it's a timely topic. There you go. That would be my feedback for myself. And I would probably encourage myself to look at, you know, Marvel's website and see if there is and I'm sure there is, a biography about Stan Lee somewhere, and that maybe I should search that out for my speech about Stan Lee and Marvel Comics. So there you go. That would be how you would complete this assignment, this written assignment for the week. Again, reminder, I think I have almost everybody's speech turned in, but it is due tonight, and it is due tonight by midnight. If it's not in by, you know, I'm not going to be awake at 12 a.m. going through speeches. I'm going to do that tomorrow. So as long as I have it before I start reviewing it, we're all good. If it's 2 a.m., I'm not going to notice. If you encounter difficulties, I know this is the first time we've uploaded things for this course. Please let me know as soon as possible. And yeah. Okay, it's been about 50 minutes. I should probably let you let you go for the evening. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate you coming out here. Um, the viewers have gone up and up, and so great that you're tuning in. Um, One thing I do want to remind you all of is that there is a second video I need you to watch this week as well. It's in this little written announcement here so that you won't forget, and the link is here. But it's about how to outline. And it does go over a little bit about informative speeches. Of course, like any due dates that are mentioned in it are not valid because it's recorded at a previous time. But you do need to watch this video as part of your homework for the week, because I don't think I'll have time for this content to cover it live next week, simply because I want to go over an example informative video and talk about the rubric for grading it and how I would grade that particular example, so that you kind of have a better idea of what you're doing. So in order to get that missing content that I don't have time to go over next week, please watch this archival video from earlier in the semester, and that would be great, or earlier in the spring rather. All right. Unless there are any questions, I am going to hang out in chat to hear any questions that the chat might have. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and log out. So those of you who are watching the archive of this don't have to wait around for 15 minutes to see if I say anything important. So I will catch you all later. I will stick around to answer questions in the chat room. But I'll see you all around. I'm looking forward to seeing your introductory speeches. Have a good evening.